more on the Eagles at the bye week. ESPN.com's NFL Nation. Tim McManus, he's now over at ESPN.com covering the Philadelphia Eagles. He covered the Eagles previously locally for Philly Mag Birds 24/7. Now at ESPN.com's NFL Nation, and he joins us here on the Sports Bash where they look at this 3-0 team, Tim. And I know entering training camp, there were so many storylines, but Wentz wasn't included in them. So I guess one question would be, if Wentz isn't the quarterback, are we looking at a team in a similar situation?
That's one that I think can be debated here, guys, because Sam Bradford's playing some pretty decent ball out in Minnesota. And one of the stats that I saw that I found interesting is the way in which Carson Wentz is getting this done. Now, he certainly, when he needs to go downfield, he goes downfield. He's got the cannon. He's got the understanding of what's open, and if he needs to get it there, he does. But the offense has been operating by and large kind of from 0 to 5 yards or even behind the line of scrimmage. I saw some numbers today where 30 of 102 pass attempts for Carson Wentz so far on the season were from the line of scrimmage or behind. And he's also, of all the completions that he had on Sunday against the Steelers, 15 of 17 he went from 0 to 5 yards. In other words, he's not going downfield, and it's not like this long ball that he's using, and certainly Sam Bradford is capable of that. In fact, both of them are among the more efficient QBs in the league so far through 3 games. But, there's also a little magic that Carson Wentz is providing right now. I don't think there's any question about that. I mean, you talk to some of the players, and they're giddy about what the rookie quarterback is doing, and I do think that can have an effect through a locker room in terms of confidence and when that ball gets rolling. I mean, it's been rolling in a big way for them.
Hey, Tim, you look at what Doug Pederson said yesterday and what we kind of were referencing. Doug Pederson said he prepares like Manning. He threw an Alex Smith reference. We've heard a lot of high-quality, big-name quarterbacks. But being around Wentz, you've been around a lot of other quarterbacks in your time covering this team. Is there something a little different about his preparation when you just kind of, get a chance to talk to him off on the side? Do you sense that this guy is a little different in that realm?
Well, he's a junkie, but a lot of them are. He's a total film junkie, and Chase Daniel deserves some credit for setting up kind of a weekly schedule that was originally in the mold of Drew Brees when Daniel was in New Orleans, and he brought it with him to Kansas City, and that helped out Alex Smith, and he's brought it with him to Philadelphia, and that's helped Carson Wentz. And those guys, they're working constantly. They get in the building at 5:30, they get out at 7+ at night, and Jordan Matthews was telling a story that on Saturday before the game or Sunday before the game at 8 o'clock in the morning, he's getting breakfast, and he looks over and Wentz is sneaking off to do some more film study by himself. I mean, so certainly has the preparation part. That doesn't necessarily make him super unique among elite quarterbacks. I mean, a lot of them, prepare their tails off in order to be excellent at their craft, and that's part of it for anybody that excels at what they do. And and Pederson went and said it was Peyton-like, and just kind of adding to the list of names that this guy has been compared to, despite the fact that he's played 3 games. But it's really tough to ignore kind of how much he's excelled in every facet of the quarterback position, and that includes preparation so far.
Hey, and Tim, let's talk about the other rookie, because you mentioned about how Carson, much of the offense has been within 1 to 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. Doug Pederson has been one heck of a play caller through the first 3 games of this season, and that's something I didn't see coming. Has that surprised you?
It sure has. I think that a lot of the questions, Johnny Mac, heading into this season were, okay, well, how are they going to do? Number one, the quarterback position was kind of like, all right, how's that going to work with the 3 of them? How is it going to work transitioning with that much of a roster overhaul during the offseason? How's it going to be with going with new schemes on the offensive and the defensive side? And then one of the biggest questions was, can Doug Pederson even coach? Can he be a head coach? Can he command? Can he be on the sideline and not have it all messed up, right? Can he have it running on the rails and smoothly and be able a good play caller and be able to manage? And we know what happened with Andy Reid and some clock management issues? Would that come over with him from Kansas City? I mean, so many questions about this. And a lot of the reasons, honestly, why the predictions were as low as they were in part because people were a little concerned about the head coach. And I think that Pederson has done a really good job. I mean, the first thing that's stuck out to me was Carson Wentz gets 8 days notice that he's the starter from here on in. Sam Bradford gets traded 8 days before the season starts, and that's a total shift for the players mentally and for the coaches that are under Pederson and for the head coach himself. And to have the team respond the way that they did, Browns are not, and to have the quarterback respond the way that he did is, really a feather in the cap of Pederson. And from here on in, the 2 weeks that followed, he's done a really nice job of finding the right ways to exploit the defenses that are opposite them and to make and help make the rookie's job a lot easier. So, yeah, I agree, man. He's done a really nice job through 3 games. A credit to him.
Talking with Tim McManus of ESPN's NFL Nation covering the Eagles. Tim, one of the other obviously very, very important additions to this team is also off the field, and that's Jim Schwartz as the defensive coordinator, because as impressive as Carson Wentz has been and as impressive as Doug has been, the Eagles defensively are near the top of this league in just about every category. Talk about what Jim Schwartz has meant to this organization and this team's defense.
At 20 points in 3 games, that's not a bad start for Jim Schwartz and that D. And I think if you were making a case at the beginning of the season as to, all right, well, maybe they can compete, it really rested on the defensive side of the ball, the strength of the defensive coordinator in Jim Schwartz, given especially his recent history and what he did in Buffalo as defensive coordinator in his 1 year there, the strength of the personnel, and also the fact that they were exiting the Chip Kelly philosophy of going 100 miles on offense and let the defense be damned. And that, I think all of those things have really worked out to the Eagles' favor. I think that Schwartz has been fantastic. He's blitzed a little bit, but not much, especially in this past game. And the front four has been very effective for him. I think the safety tandem of McLeod and Jenkins has been great. And Jenkins in particular, I don't know if I've seen him play a better game than he did this past Sunday. And so he has that operation working at a really high level. And I also think the fact that they are not going, full gear on offense all the time, that the plays are down on the defensive side, and they're down in a really big way. And the fact that the time of possession's been on the offense's favor, and all of those things have really combined to make for a stout defense that is ranking in the top of the league right now. And I don't know if it's going to stay all the way up there, but, you have to be impressed with what Schwartz and that defense have done, especially because there's always a learning curve, or there's supposed to be a learning curve when you go from one system to the next. But they took off and they've been flying. It's been pretty impressive to see.
Hey, Tim, I want to go back to that Wentz-Pederson duo real quick. What is it about that pairing that Eagles fans should think this is headed the right way and not down a Bobby Hoying, Ray Rhodes kind of road?
I think one thing with Pederson is that he's taking information from everywhere, and that includes assistant coaches and players. I think he's really open to what's being told to him, and he's not shutting it off, and he's incorporating it, and that's a real positive thing. As we all know, I mean, the 2 most important facets for a team are head coach, quarterback. You need to get that right if you want to be at a high level, quarterback in particular. And I think that can really raise all the boats. And one of the things that it looks like Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman may have hit on is finding so many quarterback experts and putting them in the building and surrounding the young quarterback with, right? So they have DeFilippo, and they got Reich, and they got Doug Pederson, and all of them know the quarterback position pretty well, and all of them have been proving that they can teach it pretty well to a guy that's coming in from North Dakota State and flourishing right away. So, I mean, there's still a road ahead. I mean, people are getting crazy with the comparisons of Wentz and Pederson's gotten the credit that he deserves, but there are going to be some stumbles along the way. So I'm not ready to declare that this is going to be some great duo for foreseeable future, but I can say that it's been very promising. And I think the fact that you have a bunch of quarterback experts working with a promising young quarterback seems to be a nice for them right now.
And when you talk about stumbles, a possible stumble or a possible obstacle coming up for the team is losing Lane Johnson. It looks like that news is going to come out soon enough. How do you think losing Lane Johnson will affect this team?
I think it could be significant. I mean, he arguably is their best offensive lineman right now. And if you lose him for an extended period of time, say the 10-game suspension holds up, then you're really hoping that everything else goes right for you, that Alan Barber kicking out to the right side, that he'll be okay, that whoever comes in at that left guard spot, Wisniewski, it'll probably be to start, maybe Sayamalo eventually, that they'll hold up all right. You have to bank on the fact that Jason Peters is going to stay and play at a pretty high level for the rest of the season when we know that he's up there in age and that he's coming off a year where he was having some injury history, and who knows if that's still lingering into this year. So those kind of things can have a domino effect that can be, really bad for especially a rookie quarterback that at least was getting some nice offensive line play in the Pittsburgh game in particular. And if that starts going away, if his comfort zone leaves him because Lane Johnson's not there, and what if Jason Peters goes out and all of a sudden you have people coming and leaking through unexpected places, that can kind of ruin an operation. So I think it's something that's really significant that you have to keep an eye on. I mean, it's possible that they can weather it, but it's going to be a factor, and it's going to be something that they have to overcome.
Yeah, we're talking with Tim McManus, ESPN.com, NFL Nation here on 97.3 ESPN. And Tim, Pete asked a little bit about Schwartz and what he's meant, but one of the things I was really impressed with was that secondary seemed like they were flying around everywhere. I mean, that's not indicative of who that secondary is it, right? I mean, they're not as good as they showed Sunday against Pittsburgh. They were all over the place.
Especially when you consider Jalen Mills and the fact that he's kind of gotten thrown in there. The expectations were probably pretty low for how he would do against Antonio Brown in particular. But they were able to scheme that up where Brown got his, but they kept him out of the end zone. They showed him a bunch of attention, and well, they should. Sometimes that was an issue under Billy Davis and Chip Kelly where they would just leave one of those premier wide receivers out on an island with a cornerback, and things did not go well. And so you have to say that Schwartz did a pretty good job in terms of drawing up a scheme that was effective, obviously, against what is supposed to be a potent Steelers attack. But you can't really look at cornerbacks just by themselves. I mean, everything's connected to everything else on the defensive side of the ball, for sure. And defensive front, if they're doing their job, then the cornerbacks don't have to guard as much. If you're having the type of safety play that Malcolm Jenkins displayed, well, then that can help cover some ground and help make up for some deficiencies. And you saw a couple instances where Mills got beat. That was certainly the case 2 weeks ago against the Bears, and that was the case again against the Steelers, but they're just doing so much well in other facets, and the most important thing is getting pressure on the quarterback. They've been able to do that, get the QB off their mark, and that helps everybody else behind them.
Hey, Graham looks like this is the switch to the 4-3 has rejuvenated him. Jenkins has played really, really well. So you look at those two spots as strengths, but how about the linebackers? What has the 4-3 done to this linebacking core? Because last year, Hicks, in the limited time he was all over the place making plays. It seems like you don't hear the linebackers' names as much, but what has this 4-3 done to the 4-3 to the talent that the Eagles have now?
Yeah, you haven't really heard a whole lot, but that can be good as well. I mean, as we saw with a wide nine front that was destined for failure with Juan Castillo and not a very good linebacking core and just kind of some concepts that weren't going to work out. You can see if you're attacking with the wide nine front, it puts some stress on the linebackers, particularly if they don't know what they're doing, and the safeties as well, because they have to be responsible for some run fits. But this defense, and it hasn't really featured Michael Kendricks very much. They've been relying more on Bradham and certainly Hicks and bringing in Tulloch here and there. And but those guys have been really solid, and that's kind of what they've been asked to do, I feel like, is just make the play. Know where you're supposed to be, fill it, and bring the guy down. And so I think that they've been very effective from that standpoint. Because they're not much of a blitzing D, you're probably not going to see a whole lot of linebackers flying in with regularity. It's one of the things that is unfortunate for Kendricks because that's really his greatest strength. But, I think that they've done a nice job in the role that Schwartz has asked them to fill so far.
Tim McManus, ESPN's NFL Nation, joining us on the Sports Bash. Tim, Now, you've known me for a long time. I'm not exactly the most positive person in the world at times. But, I've found it very, very hard to criticize Carson Wentz to this point. Other than the fact he needs to protect himself better, what am I missing? Because this guy looks like a franchise quarterback. What other concerns do you have?
I have known you for a long time, Johnny Mac, and I know that you're looking for ways in which he's coming up short. But you're right. It's really tough to point things out. I mean, the number one thing was the fact that he was giving his body up a lot more than he should, especially on the sideline. That's something that the coaching staff and the players and even Wentz himself were all ticked off about and needed it corrected. And I think at least for 1 week he did a pretty good job in that respect. But otherwise, there's really nothing to pick apart. I mean, because what he's doing is picking apart defenses. He's going up to the line. He has a very clear understanding of what he's doing. He's not forcing the ball. That's evidenced by the fact that he doesn't have a turnover yet. He takes what they give him. He makes them pay if he finds a matchup that he can exploit. And the one thing that Pederson said on Monday that I thought was interesting is that his recollection is so good that if he sees a front or coverage once, he knows what it means, and he knows where the defense is going, and he knows how to take advantage of it. And for a young quarterback to kind of have that mastery already is ridiculous. So you have to give him all the accolades that you can throw on him for 3 games. You don't want to. I feel like people are pushing the narrative a little bit too much of, okay, well, is he Favre or is he Peyton or is he this? I mean, even the head coach probably should slow down a little bit because he admitted that part of his job is to protect them. And I think that expectations are getting a little crazy. But the reason why they're getting so crazy is because Wentz has been that good. I mean, he's been everything that you could possibly ask so far. He's done everything just with precision and with poise and with excellence. And so I know that you're trying, John, but there's not much there to pick apart, man. He's just doing an outstanding job.
Tim McManus with us. Tim, I saw a tweet yesterday that said, can you believe the Eagles got Darren Sproles for the price that they got him for, the impact that he has that people don't always see?
A 5th-round pick looks pretty good right now, the way that he's come in and had that sort of impact. And, he's, in his 30s now, and I think he was hinting the fact that he might retire after next year. So we might not see a whole lot of Sproles down the road, but what you're seeing now just kind of looks like a throwback performance every now and again of what he's been able to do in this league and the amount of yards that he's been able to rack up. Now he's among the leaders all time in all-purpose yards. I mean, he's just the preparation that he puts in is legendary, apparently. He works out with some of the best out in San Diego. LaDainian Tomlinson used to be part of that group. Drew Brees is part of that group. And there's a number of high-end NFL players that work out at the facility that Sproles does. And apparently he's like, the leader of that he sets the bar in terms of how you're supposed to prepare in the off season. And that's a big part of what has allowed him to excel the way that he has for so long, despite the fact that he's not the biggest guy in the world. And in that play, that play was pretty much everything, wasn't it? With Wentz and Sproles, just kind of the recognition that Wentz had, and to be able to elude a defender, find the line of scrimmage, tiptoe it, still have the lob. Just everything. And then Sproles zigging and zagging like it was a kick return. It was just kind of a magical moment for an Eagles fan base that wasn't expecting much, and then all of a sudden they're having these kind of bright moments like this, and Sproles was a big part of that one, obviously.
Tim, here's an interesting text message we just got in from a listener. Who would have thought that this question would have ever been posed? But the question was, how secure is Howie Roseman's deal, and what are your thoughts on another team trying to steal him away? You got people now that are like, are afraid that Howie could leave. How important of a role has he played in the way this team has gotten off to this 3-0 start? Because it seems like, what's an underrated part of this is he locked up a lot of those core guys that some people were like, they didn't fit in the Kelly regime, the Currys, the Grahams, those type of guys.
And he also wiped away almost all of the fingerprints of Kelly. And that was after Kelly did his best to try to wipe all the fingerprints away of Roseman. And when you have that kind of instability, it leads to bad things. And that's one of the reasons, at least personally, why I didn't think that they were going to have a particularly good season, is because of the amount of change and transition that they had to go through. But but obviously he's hit some right notes here. And the most important thing, I've heard so many people talk about, if I was tied to a good quarterback, I'd still have a job, and just how important it is to get it right with the QB spot. Then all of a sudden everybody looks brilliant. I mean, if Wentz floundered, Roseman would be getting killed. Laurie would be getting killed. Just like people out in St. Louis or now LA, or in Cleveland are probably roasting their respective management right now. But if you get it right at quarterback, then that can really lead to some job security. That can lead to a lot of rightful kind of applause for what you've done. And Roseman, we all know what he did in order to get up to that number 2 spot. I mean, it wasn't easy, and he was able to pull that off.
A lot of heavy lifting there.
Yeah, and then was able to deal Bradford for just a crazy amount on the doorstep of the season. So obviously, if it continues to go this way, an executive of the year might not be far off for him.
Tim McManus, ESPN.com's NFL Nation. He covers the Eagles, and the Eagles on the bye. They'll take on the Lions next week. You can hear that game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Tim, we appreciate it, pal.
All right, boys. Take care.